not just the clamor of streets, the buzzing of screens, or the endless chatter of weak voices. No, the noise is inside you. A ceaseless storm of words, explanations, justifications, rehearsed arguments that never reach the battlefield. You drown in them. You talk to yourself more than you act. You rehearse your defense when no one has accused you. You craft speeches to imaginary judges. You fight wars in your head that never spill into reality. And while you do, the world marches past you, calculating, advancing, gaining territory. You sit in the trench of your mind, reciting poetry to yourself, while enemies secure the high ground. This is your first wound. You think words protect you. They don't. They expose you. Every time you speak without silence behind your words, you weaken. You hand over your map. You reveal your position. You show your hunger, your desperation, your loneliness, your need. And others, those less innocent than you see it. They take note. They exploit. They learn your weaknesses, not from your defeats, but from your own mouth. You open the gates, and they march in without resistance. This is why you lose without realizing it. Your tongue is your enemy. Your mind is your prison guard, and you bow before both, begging them for scraps of peace. Niccolo Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. He studied courts, kings, and common men, and he saw the same disease in them that festers in you now. The compulsion to reveal, to speak, to explain, to confess. He understood that silence is not emptiness, it is armor. It is the discipline of withholding. It is the refusal to surrender the battlefield of the mind. For in silence, you deny reconnaissance to your enemy. In silence, you let them attack shadows. In silence, you preserve the element of surprise. But you have never learned this. You still believe speaking clears you, probes you, redeems you. This belief has cost you power, opportunity, respect, and you still cling to it as though it were salvation. You tell yourself that communication builds bridges, that honesty is noble, that people respect transparency. These are illusions crafted by those who gain from your exposure. They preach openness so they can strip you bare. They celebrate vulnerability while sharpening their knives. You have been conditioned to believe that silence is weakness, that the quiet one hides shame, that the voiceless lack courage. In truth, silence is command. Silence is dominance. Silence forces others into discomfort, into guessing, into revealing themselves while you stand immovable. Watching. Words are expenditure. Silence is reserve. And reserve is power. But you were never taught to endure silence. From childhood, they drilled you to answer every question, to justify every choice, to explain your every mistake. Teachers demanded response. Parents demanded reasons. Society demanded constant availability. And so, you became an obedient supplier of words, feeding the endless appetite of others who needed nothing more than your compliance. You forgot that silence is also a weapon. You forgot that silence denies them their meal. You forgot that silence forces respect, even fear. You became addicted to your own explanations. And now, you wear them like chains. This is why you are weak. Not because you lack intelligence, not because you lack ambition, but because you cannot master your own mouth, because you bleed strategy through careless disclosure, because you think winning requires convincing, persuading, talking your way into control. It doesn't. It requires silence that cannot be penetrated, silence that unnerves, silence that breaks the rhythm of others until they stumble over their own words. revealing their position. On a battlefield, the first to speak, their plan is the first to die. Yet you still speak as if words will save you. You think your voice commands, when in reality, it kneels. And so you continue to lose ground. Machiavellian strategy dictates that silence is reconnaissance. Every moment you do not speak is a moment you collect intelligence. You watch, you measure, you let others unfold their weaknesses. You become the still shadow in the room that everyone feels but cannot read. This is the true posture of power, to deny them knowledge of what you think, what you want, what you intend, to move when the terrain is mapped, and to strike when they have emptied their supply lines into chatter. Silence is not absence, it is camouflage. It is deception. It is the most potent form of psychological warfare because it forces others to fight themselves. You have failed to see that words cost supply. Every sentence you speak burns resources. Every explanation you give drains your authority. Every argument you defend consumes your soldiers. And for what? For the fleeting satisfaction of being understood. Understand this. Being understood does not win wars. Being feared does. Being respected does. Being unreadable does. When you are silent, you are a fortress. When you speak without discipline, you are an open field, trampled by any who pass. The enemy knows this. They count on it. They provoke you, not to fight, but to make you talk, to make you expose your position, to bait you into confession. They know you crave release, so they corner you with accusations, with rumors, with subtle jabs, and you take the bait. You protest, you explain, you react, you lose, not because you were defeated, but because you surrendered your silence, because you armed them with knowledge. You think you defended yourself, but you only equipped the enemy. This is how your battles are lost before they begin. You must understand the cost of continuing this way. If you remain chained to your tongue, you will be forever predictable, forever exploitable. You will enter every conflict already defeated. Because they know your weapons before you draw them. You will lose negotiations before they begin. Because your desperation leaks in every phrase. You will be dominated by those with less intelligence but greater discipline. The battlefield of life does not reward truth, it rewards control. And you have none. As long as you let words spill without strategy, mental silence is not passive. It is active control. It is the commander restraining the troops until the terrain is secure. It is the general holding fire until the enemy exposes their flank. It is the strategist mapping every movement while appearing motionless. You confuse silence with weakness because you do not know how to wield it. Silence without control is emptiness. Silence with control is power. And you need power more than you need comfort. Comfort has kept you weak. Comfort has kept you speaking, defending, confessing. Power will only come when you cut the tongue of habit and sit in the fire of silence. Niccolo Machiavelli once warned that rulers fall when they fail to control appearances. Words are appearances. They shape how you are read. They betray you more than they ever shield you. The ruler who speaks too much exposes uncertainty. The ruler who speaks too soon invites rebellion. The ruler who speaks without calculation invites ruin. You are no different. You are your own ruler. And your words are your decrees. Every careless one weakens your throne. Every unnecessary one exposes cracks in your crown. If you want to rule yourself and others, you must first learn to hold silence as your scepter. The silence I speak of is not simply keeping your mouth shut. It is a deeper silence. The mental silence that steadies your battlefield. It is the refusal to let your mind chatter dictate your moves. It is the stillness that lets you perceive every weakness in others. It is the silence of the assassin who moves without footsteps. The silence of the predator who waits without blinking. The silence of the strategist who watches armies crumble under their own chaos. This is not peace. It is war by other means. It is victory without the clash of swords. It is the power to win without words. And you, if you are honest, have never tasted it. You have never endured true silence because you are afraid of what it would reveal. Afraid of your own emptiness. Afraid of losing connection. Afraid of being misunderstood. But the truth is brutal. No one respects the one who explains. No one fears the one who talks endlessly. They respect the one who withholds. They fear the one they cannot read. They bow to the one who forces them into uncertainty. Silence is not absence of sound, it is presence of dominance. It fills the room heavier than any speech could. It forces every eye to you, every mind to guess, every enemy to falter. This is the rule Machiavelli understood. The rule you must carve into your bones if you intend to rise. You were trained to equate words with survival, to talk your way out of punishment, to prove your worth, to convince others of your place. This reflex has never left you. Even now, when no one asks, you feel the compulsion to explain. You justify choices before they are challenged. You defend actions before they are attacked. You rush to fill silence because silence terrifies you. It feels like exposure. In truth, silence is concealment. It hides your strategy. It cloaks your weakness. But you cannot endure the weight of it. You break under its pressure and run to words for relief. Not seeing that every word is a signal flare to the enemy. Understand this. Those who master silence own the battlefield before the first clash. Look around. The people who dominate your life are rarely the loudest. They are not the ones flooding conversations with explanations. They are the ones who say little, who listen, who force you to reveal yourself, while they reveal nothing. They control tempo. They control pressure. They let you expose your supply lines while theirs remain hidden. This is not an accident. It is strategy. They have learned what you have not, that silence is reconnaissance and words are waste. You confuse energy with effectiveness. You believe activity proves dominance. You believe constant words prove relevance. But Machiavellian strategy is colder. The one who controls information controls the outcome. Silence is the shield that preserves information. It is the vault that denies the enemy access. You leak what should be guarded. You confuse disclosure with strength. You hand over intelligence as if it were worthless. And then you wonder why you remain at the mercy of others. Ask yourself, how many times have you lost because you said too much? How many alliances have crumbled because you exposed your hunger? How many opportunities slipped because you revealed your plan too early? You talk, and they listen. They take notes while you spill your strategy. They smile while you arm them. Then they strike, using your own words against you. You think they misunderstood you. No, they understood perfectly. They understood your weakness, your impatience, your lack of discipline, and they exploited it with precision. You built their victory with your own tongue. Machiavelli studied rulers who rose and fell by such patterns. He saw that those who mastered silence created an aura of inevitability. Their enemies could not predict them. Their allies could not control them. Their subjects could not read them. They ruled by uncertainty. They let others project assumptions into the void of their silence. And those assumptions became traps. This is what you must learn. When you are silent, others speak for you. They imagine your motives. They reveal their fears. They expose their insecurities. And all the while, you remain untouched, watching them dig their own graves. You fear silence because you think it makes you invisible. You are wrong. Silence makes you terrifyingly visible. It turns every eye toward you, every mind toward deciphering you. People cannot endure the unknown. They cannot bear an unreadable presence. They would rather face hostility than ambiguity. Silence gives them ambiguity. Silence makes them restless. Silence forces them to fill the void with their own confessions. In the courtroom of power, the one who speaks least controls the trial. The jury leans toward them. The opponent scrambles to interpret. The judge waits on their slightest word. And you, if you learn discipline, can hold this power, but this requires more than keeping your mouth shut. Silence is not simply absence of speech. It is command of your internal battlefield. If your mind is loud, your silence is fragile. If you are consumed by internal chatter, you radiate it even without words. People feel the storm in you. They sense the instability. This is why mental silence is the foundation. Without mental silence, your silence is hollow. With mental silence, your silence becomes impenetrable armor. It becomes presence. It becomes weight. It becomes the wall against which others crash and break. To reach this silence, you must first kill your illusions. Stop believing that honesty earns loyalty. Stop believing that openness earns trust. Stop believing that vulnerability wins love. These are lies fed to you by those who benefit from your exposure. In war, transparency is suicide. In strategy, openness is defeat. You must replace these illusions with a harsher truth. Respect comes from control, not confession. Fear comes from unreadability, not openness. Power comes from silence, not speeches. Until you accept this, you will remain weak. You were taught to seek approval. You were taught to be understood. You were taught that others' validation secures your worth. And so, you explain yourself endlessly. You argue to prove you are right. You confess to prove you are good. You talk to prove you exist. But existence does not need proof. Power does not ask for permission. The more you seek approval, the more you bleed power. The more you explain, the less they respect you. Power does not explain. Power acts. Power withholds. Power does not tremble in silence. It commands through it. Imagine a battlefield commander revealing his every plan to the enemy before the first shot. Imagine a general broadcasting his supply routes, his weaknesses, his fears. This is you. Every time you speak without discipline, you disclose positions that should remain hidden. You hand over maps that should remain sealed. You weaken your army before the first engagement. And then you wonder why you are always retreating. The war was lost before it began because your own mouth betrayed you. You must learn to see words as weapons with limited ammunition. Every word you fire leaves you weaker. Every sentence exposes your supply. You must learn to conserve them, to ration them, to fire only when it strikes decisively. Mental silence is the stockpile. It is the discipline of waiting. It is the arsenal untouched until the moment of destruction. This is why silence terrifies others. They know when you do speak, it will not be waste. It will be lethal. Niccolo Machiavelli once observed that men fall not because they lack strength, but because they misread the terrain. You misread the terrain of human interaction. You think it is built on honesty. It is built on strategy. You think it is built on kindness. It is built on advantage. You think it is built on equality. It is built on hierarchy. And words, your constant spilling of them, always place you lower. You volunteer subordination every time you confess. You bow with every explanation. You kneel with every uncontrolled outburst. This is why you remain small. You have trained yourself to be the servant who supplies words to his masters. The silence I demand from you is not silence of retreat. It is silence of positioning. It is silence of the sniper, who waits unseen until one shot decides the war. It is silence of the strategist, who lets the enemy overextend while conserving his strength. It is silence of the sovereign, who does not stoop to argue with his subjects. You must reframe silence, not as loss, but as command. The one who controls silence controls tempo. The one who controls tempo controls outcome. If you learn this, you will never beg again. But if you refuse, the cost will grow heavier. You will remain the pawn, others maneuver. You will continue to hand them your secrets before they ask. You will continue to play battles where you are already defeated. And the worst part, you will believe you are noble for doing so. You will mistake your weakness for honesty. You will mistake your self-sabotage for virtue. You will mistake your chains for morality. And you will never rise. You will be unheard. Not because you were silent, but because you wasted your voice until no one listened. Mental silence is your salvation from this fate. It is the cutting away of noise. It is the refusal to dance to their tempo. It is the strength to let them sweat under their own words, while you conserve your strength. It is the posture that unnerves rivals and elevates rulers. It is the rule Machiavelli understood, that the power to win is not always in what you say, but in what you refuse to say. In silence. You starve them. In silence. You command them. In silence. You win without lifting your sword. You are addicted to release. That is your weakness. The pressure builds in your mind, and you run to words as though they will save you. You spill them like water from a broken vessel. You give relief to yourself, but strength to your enemy. This is the cycle you have lived without seeing it. Pressure, release, defeat, again and again. You give away your edge to regain momentary comfort. You do not even realize that this reflex is why you remain powerless. You trade victory for relief. You trade dominance for comfort. And comfort is the currency of slaves, not rulers. Niccolo Machiavelli would tell you that silence is not absence. It is patience, sharpened into a weapon. It is control over impulse, mastery over timing. The one who can endure silence commands every exchange. When others rush to speak, you wait. When others rush to justify, you withhold. When others panic into explanation, you remain immovable. You let them reveal themselves entirely while you reveal nothing. By the time you do speak, the battlefield is already yours. They have already surrendered their strategy. They have already emptied their resources. And your silence, sustained, becomes the blade that cuts without effort. You have been blind to this because you confuse chatter with presence. You think that by talking, you prove you exist. You think noise secures your place. But presence is not noise. Presence is weight. Presence is the force that bends a room around you. Words can weaken presence if they are undisciplined. Silence amplifies it. Think of the ruler at court who speaks only once while courtiers argue endlessly. That single word decides. That single word is remembered. The noise is forgotten, dismissed as weakness. You, however, have chosen to live in the noise. And that is why no one remembers you. You drown yourself out with your own voice. Consider how the battlefield of human interaction actually functions. Information is terrain. Whoever controls information controls movement. Whoever leaks information exposes their flank. You leak endlessly. You surrender high ground by speaking without calculation. You disclose intentions before you have secured position. You telegraph moves before you strike. Your enemy, even if mediocre, gains the upper hand simply by letting you talk. They need no spies when you volunteer everything. They need no strategy when you sabotage yourself. Your openness is their victory. Machiavelli saw that rulers who misused words were despised, but rulers who mastered silence were feared. Fear, not love. Securus. Obedience. Respect, not sympathy. Secure loyalty. You want to be loved. You want to be understood. That is why you bleed yourself dry with explanations. But in your quest for love, you lose power. And when power is gone, love turns to contempt. Love without power is pity. Fear without words is power. You must choose. Do you want pity? Or do you want command? Look at yourself clearly. How many times have you spoken when silence would have been stronger? How many times have you confessed before you were asked? How many times have you revealed your plan only to watch others take it and use it against you? You are not betrayed by circumstance. You are betrayed by your own compulsion. You sabotage yourself before your enemies touch you. This is why you remain small. This is why you remain unheard in any meaningful way. You speak too much, too often, without discipline. Silence forces endurance. It forces you to sit in the discomfort of not being seen, not being approved, not being validated. This is the crucible of strength. Only when you master silence can you resist the urge to beg. Only then can you deny the enemy their meal. Only then can you move with precision instead of desperation. Silence trains the will. Silence breaks the reflex. Silence molds you into something harder than the weak. Talkative self, you have been. That weak self must or you will never rise. You fear being misunderstood. You fear being misread. But understand this. Misunderstanding is a weapon. Let them misread you. Let them build fantasies about your silence. Let them believe you are weak when you are calculating. Let them think you are passive when you are positioning. Let them assume you are finished when you are preparing. Every false assumption they make is a trap you laid with silence. You give them nothing and they destroy themselves with their own imaginations. This is psychological warfare. This is winning without lifting a blade. And you throw it away every time you explain yourself. Mental silence is power because it severs you from their control. They cannot bait you when you refuse to answer. They cannot measure you when you refuse to reveal. They cannot bind you when you refuse to confess. You starve them of leverage. You deny them tools. You become untouchable. The more you speak, the more they own you. The less you speak, the more they fear you. It is that simple. This is not morality. This is war. And in war, silence is supremacy. You must learn to separate silence from cowardice. Weak men stay silent because they are afraid to speak. Powerful men stay silent because they have no need to. The difference is everything. When your silence is born of fear, it betrays you. When your silence is born of command, it elevates you. You must cultivate silence, not as escape, but as strategy. Not as retreat, but as posture. You must hold it with the weight of a sovereign who chooses not to speak because his silence speaks louder than words. This is the silence of command. This is the silence of power. Niccolo Machiavelli would remind you that reputation is the armor of rulers. Words shatter reputation when they are careless. Silence fortifies reputation when it is disciplined. The more you say, the more chances you have to reveal cracks. The less you say, the stronger the illusion of perfection. Power does not need to prove itself. It needs to maintain appearance. And silence is the strongest appearance of all. Because it forces others to imagine what lies behind it. They will imagine strength, depth, calculation, even if none exists. Your silence will create the illusion you could never build with words. And yet, you resist this. You cling to the need to be seen clearly. You still believe that clarity will protect you. But clarity destroys rulers. Clarity is transparency. and transparency is vulnerability. No general marches into war with a glass shield. No ruler governs with a transparent crown. The less they know, the more they fear, the less they see, the more they imagine, and imagination is stronger than reality. Imagination makes you larger than you are. Words make you smaller. Words expose the truth. Silence lets them believe anything, and they will always believe something more dangerous than what is real. Your failure is not ignorance. It is indulgence. You indulge in the luxury of words. You cannot endure the discipline of silence. You surrender to weakness because it feels easier, and it has cost you everything. Opportunity lost. Respect denied. Power surrender. All because you would rather be comfortable than commanding. This must end. If you want power, you must learn to kill comfort. If you want command, you must embrace the weight of silence. If you want to rise, you must strip yourself of this addiction to words. There is no other path. Machiavelli's rule is clear. Rulers who master appearances survive. Appearances are not truth, they are perception. And silence shapes perception more effectively than words ever could. Words are bound by truth. Silence is bound by nothing. Silence lets you be anyone, anything, everything. Silence is the most flexible weapon you have, and you waste it daily by choosing noise instead. You play with dull blades while a sharp sword hangs in your hand. You beg for scraps while the feast sits before you. You suffer because you refuse to wield what has been in your reach all along. You must understand this. Every battlefield rewards the one who holds composure. The first to panic loses. The first to speak reveals. The first to flinch surrenders initiative. And you, your entire life, you have been the one to flinch. You rush to fill silence, to bridge the gap, to soften the tension. You think this earns peace. It earns defeat. Peace does not come from filling silence. Peace comes from dominating silence. The one who controls silence controls the field. They dictate tempo. They shape the air. They make others bend, while they remain unbent. Mental silence is your most neglected weapon. It is the shield that blocks manipulation. It is the blade that cuts without effort. It is the fortress that cannot be penetrated, and still you run from it, as though it were an enemy. But it is your only chance to escape the cage you have built with your own tongue. Without silence, you will never command respect. Without silence, you will never be feared. Without silence, you will never rise above the swarm of talkers who bleed themselves dry with words. If you want to rule, you must learn to endure the unbearable weight of silence until it bends others. Not you. Niccolo Machiavelli once observed that rulers who cannot control themselves cannot control anything. Your lack of silence is proof of your lack of control. You are ruled by impulse. You are governed by the itch to explain. You are enslaved by the need to be seen. And as long as you remain enslaved, you will never rule. Power demands control first over self, then over others. If you cannot silence your own mind, you cannot silence your tongue. If you cannot silence your tongue, you cannot command anyone else's. Discipline begins in the mind. Mental silence is not an option. It is the foundation. It is the throne on which power sits. You imagine silence as emptiness. It is not emptiness. It is weight. It presses down on those who face you. It forces them into discomfort. It makes them squirm. Explain. Confess. Silence is a mirror that reflects their weakness while concealing your own. In silence, they unravel. In silence, they lose composure. In silence, they expose everything you need. You win not by striking, but by letting them destroy themselves. This is war without words. This is victory without cost. This is the Machiavellian rule you have ignored your whole life. Look at your past. Look at every defeat. Trace them back, and you will find the same root. Words. Words spoken too early. Words spoken too much. Words spoken without discipline. Words that armed your enemies. Words that bled your strength. Every chain you wear was forged by your own tongue. Every loss you suffered was enabled by your own inability to be silent. This is the brutal truth. Not fate, not betrayal, not bad luck. Your own mouth has been your executioner. Your own noise has been your downfall. The cost of continuing is clear. Stay as you are, and you will never rise. You will remain the pawn who explains himself to his masters. You will remain the servant who speaks more than he commands. You will remain trapped in weakness, addicted to the noise that destroys you. And when you die, you will be remembered not as a ruler, not as a strategist, not as one who commanded, but as another voice lost in the noise, forgotten, erased, consumed by your own lack of discipline. But you still have a choice. You can break this cycle. You can reclaim control. You can forge silence into power. It will not be comfortable. It will not be gentle. It will burn you at first, because silence feels like death to the weak. It feels like suffocation to the one addicted to noise. But endure it, and it will transform you. The battlefield will change. People will bend before you. Confused, unsettled, uncertain. They will whisper about you instead of over you. They will reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. They will waste their strength on chatter while you conserve yours. And when you strike, it will be final. This is the power that silence gives. This is the power you have wasted. This is the power you must now claim. Mental silence is the chain of command within yourself. It is discipline enforced at the highest level. It is the refusal to let the soldiers of your mind break formation. It is the control of the supply lines of your energy. It is the reconnaissance that maps your opponents while you remain invisible. It is the flanking maneuver that strikes from nowhere. It is the war of attrition that exhausts them while you remain intact. Without mental silence, you are chaos. With mental silence, you are a campaign of inevitability. This is not suggestion. This is law. Do not mistake this for meditation. Do not confuse this with peace. This is not serenity. This is not healing. This is not comfort. This is war. This is strategy. This is the weaponization of silence. The silence I demand from you is not the silence of monks. It is the silence of generals. It is not retreat from the world. It is domination of it. It is not surrender. It is control. It is the silence that unnerves your rivals, terrifies your enemies, and bends the world to your pace. It is silence as force. It is silence as power. Machiavelli's rule is simple. If you cannot win with words, win without them. And more often than not, words are the enemy. Words betray. Words weaken. Words enslave. But silence commands. Silence endure. Silence wins. You must decide now. Will you continue to waste yourself in noise? Or will you master the silence that terrifies men and bends empires? There is no middle ground. Either you reclaim silence as your weapon, or you remain a prisoner of your own tongue. Either you rise in power, or you sink in weakness. The choice is before you. Do not look for comfort in this decision. There is none. The path of silence is not soft. It is sharp. It cuts you first before it cuts others. It burns you before it burns them. But once you endure it, once you master it, you will become unreadable, unshakable, unassailable. You will no longer be their pawn. You will no longer be baited into weakness. You will no longer bleed yourself dry. You will hold the battlefield in silence. And they will bow, because they cannot endure it. They will break, because you refuse to. Now is the moment. No more explanations. No more rehearsed defenses. No more spilling weakness. You must sever the tongue of habit. You must silence the noise within. You must hold your ground when every nerve screams to speak. This is the initiation. This is the test. You either endure, or you remain as you are. You either rise, or you fall. There is no compromise. There is no halfway. Silence will either become your weapon or your grave. Mental silence is power. Not suggestion. Not theory. Power. It is the throne you either seize or abandon. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this. He saw rulers fall by their own words, and rulers rise by their silence. Now you see the same choice before you. You can remain chained to weakness, or you can break free into power. You can continue as prey, or you can step into rule. The battlefield is waiting. The enemies are watching. The silence is yours to wield. Choose now. Either you embrace the cold discipline of silence and claim power, or you remain a slave to your own noise and die powerless. There is no middle ground. There never was.